Good morning. This is the second video about practicing. During the last lesson, you set some personal goals. After this video, you'll create your own custom practice schedule in order to achieve those goals. Why do we have to create a schedule? Well, it's probably obvious that in order to play an instrument well, you need to spend time playing it. When you play your instrument by yourself, working on your own goals and improving your own playing, we call that practicing. When you have a practice schedule that you use, you're likely to practice regularly and thus become a good player. When you're a good player, you can play good music, you enjoy what you play, and it makes you happy. You'll need to create your own schedule because there isn't one way of practice that works for everyone. Some people need more time, some people need less. And even for just one person, the amount of time that you'll need for practice will vary depending on the time of year and what you're working on. Your practice schedule also needs to work around your real life. There are important things in your life other than practicing, and you can't do two things at the same time. So the first thing we need to do is decide when you definitely won't practice. For that, you're going to make a visual schedule. One thing to mention before we start, this December we'll be doing remote learning. As the year goes on, that will probably change, possibly several times. Whenever you have a significant schedule change, you should reconsider your practice schedule and change things if you need to. Okay, so here's the visual schedule. You'll be able to find this on Schoology. On this page, notice that there are 7 days at the top. It starts with Monday, since that's the first day of the school week, and it ends with the weekend. On the left, you'll notice that the day starts at 12 a.m. midnight and ends at the next 12 a.m., the next midnight. That's because there are 24 hours in each day. Obviously, some of these hours won't be used for practicing. So let's block out some chunks. First, we're going to start with school. The school day goes from 8 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. on Monday through Friday. Or does it? With these asynchronous Mondays, maybe your Mondays will look different. Maybe there will be a time during the school day on Mondays when you can practice if you want to. I'm not sure. But that's not a time when I can practice, so I'm going to leave this blocked off. And I'm going to label the whole chunk as school. Now, we also need to consider transitions. Normally, it takes time to get to school. Perhaps you ride the bus, perhaps you walk or are driven. But in whichever case, you don't instantly teleport from home to school and back again. Although, during December, we will be magically transporting to school and back using the magic of the internet. But even so, there are things you need to do in the morning before you're ready. Things like getting dressed, having breakfast, brushing your teeth. Maybe you take a shower or a bath in the morning. Some people do it at night. We don't need to get specific about all the things we do to get ready, but we do need to reserve some time to get ready. Just one block of time for how long it generally takes. And I think if I'm going to start the day at 8, I probably need to get up at 6 to make that happen. Getting ready. Okay. All right, so let's add sleep. What time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up? You obviously can't practice while sleeping, so we're going to block off those times. And let's see. I'll be sleeping for, the whole morning until I get up. Well, I guess I sleep on the weekends as well. And that's 6 hours. That's not enough. I need to go to bed before midnight. So I think about 9 hours is good for me. So I'm going to aim to go to bed at 9 o'clock. Now, realistically, that doesn't happen all the time, but that's my goal. Okay. And then what other activities do you do? Make sure to reserve chunks of time for any after-school clubs, sports, church, anything you do in a typical week. So, uh, even if do you have a family game night every Friday, then reserve time for that. Or do you watch a new episode of The Mandalorian every Thursday? You can reserve time for that too. It may seem silly, like that's not as important, but, well, if you know that there's a time you're not going to want to practice, then block it off. If you find that you've blocked off the entire week for leisure activities, then you may have to rethink your priorities. But you should have some time for leisure activities each week. Ideally, you should have some free time each day. For myself, I like to reserve a large chunk of time on Saturday afternoons, just to do whatever I feel like doing that time. So I'll call that free time. Now you might be wondering what to do if you have activities that happen regularly, but they're not every week. For example, I have meetings that happen on Thursdays, but only twice a month. Nonetheless, they are important. I know I can't practice during them, so I will block off that time and the travel time for that meeting. I also have a meeting on most Wednesdays, almost every Wednesday, but the time changes each week. So which time should I choose? Well, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'll just block off a chunk of time that I think will be useful for this schedule. And I think in any case, I should be home by like 5:30. Yeah, that's pretty normal. Um, Sometimes you may have a more significant alternative schedule that you do want to get more specific on for different weeks. For example, maybe your parents live in different households and you alternate weeks with them, and you have a specific but very different schedule at each house. If it's useful, you can make two versions of the schedule, one for each house. When considering what things to include on the schedule, keep in mind that this is a tool for you to decide when you will practice. There is no judgment here. If something's important to you and happens regularly, then include it. If there's something that you need to reserve time for, but you don't want to share what it is, um, you can block that off and just label personal. That's not actually personal, that's my handbell choir meets, but I'll pretend it's personal. Or maybe private. Whatever you want. You'll know what it is, and that's enough. So let's see, what else do I have? Well, I also have some meetings on Tuesdays. And I teach some private lessons on Thursdays and on Saturdays. And sometimes on Wednesdays too. And I have church on Saturdays. Oh, and then I almost forgot. We need to make sure we have time for meals too. So I'm going to call this dinner or supper, depending on where you are. Sometimes dinner is your supper, sometimes it's your lunch. So down here as well, and here, and I have late dinners on Tuesdays. I guess I have to take that chunk of time for dinner too. Could include that in free time, but really I don't eat just for the fun of it. And like I have this whole chunk of time on Sundays. I don't know when dinner is. I mean, whenever I get hungry, I make dinner, I guess. So I'm reserving that chunk of time, but it's flexible. I can move it up or down as I desire. And then kind of same thing for lunch over here. And I guess there's getting ready and breakfast. I'll just include breakfast with the getting ready. All right, so once you have blocked out time for the other important things in your life, then we're going to be looking at whatever is left. And the next decision is when you want to practice. You have to decide how often should you practice and how long do you want to practice each time. Keep in mind that this is not a promise to do the exact same thing every time. Some days you'll want to keep practicing longer. Other days you'll want to end sooner. This is just a target for use in general. So how many days a week should you practice? Well, if you were to think, how many days do you think you should practice? Let's start there. I guess I will say that most teachers recommend practicing for short periods every day, and usually they ask for 30 minutes a day, which I find a little funny because 30 minutes seems like a long period of time. It doesn't seem so short. But 30 minutes a day can be a good starting point if you're not sure how much you want to practice. 30 minutes a day will make you a pretty good player. However, unless you're deeply in love with your instrument, you should take at least 1 or 2 days off so that you're not feeling obligated to practice every day. We don't want practice to feel like work. We want practice to be enjoyable. So if I were to do that, looking at my schedule, I do have at least one block each day that I could fill with time. Oh, I gotta save my Ando time. And so Thursdays, it looks like I don't have a practice time. This is the way. And probably what I do is, Saturday I have my free time. I don't particularly want to practice in the morning either. So I'd probably pick the other 5 days a week. However, for me personally, I don't actually do well with 30 minutes a day. I find that it takes me at least 45 minutes to warm up, to remind my fingers how they're supposed to move, and to get back to the level of skill that I'm really at. After about 45 minutes, I play much better. I'm in tune. I have a good tone. Everything's coming more naturally. And so it's only after that warm-up period that I can really make improvement. So when I practice, I like to practice for at least an hour and a half or 2 hours at a time. But in exchange, I'm not going to do that every day. So let's say I want to do that. I'll make this practice. And oh, now this is interesting. We have a couple of days right after school, so I don't want to do it too late before I go to bed. So let's make these. And then, conveniently enough, those would even be the same time. Although, come to think of it, I'll probably be doing office hours during that time, but let's pretend I'm not. Okay, so now I've got 4 chunks of practice time. They're each an hour and a half long, so that's 5, that's 6 hours a week. That's a lot. But I also know that realistically, I probably won't be getting all of these, so maybe I'll aim for 3 out of 4. That sounds good. That way, if there's a day when I really don't feel like it, I can miss it, and I know that I have enough other times to still make it up. Okay. And then in the end, I'm practicing the same amount of time, even if I just hit 2 of those weeks. I'm practicing the same amount of time as if I were doing half an hour every day. I'm just organizing it in a way that works better for me. While you're creating your schedule, please collaborate with your parents. What that collaboration looks like, I can leave up to you. I think in an ideal situation, you and your family would create the whole schedule from scratch together. That way, when it's your time to practice, your family knows what you're doing and can support you by leaving you uninterrupted. When I was a kid, I was rather oblivious to my weekly schedule, so I would have needed my mom to remind me when my activities were and how long they took. But if your parents are too busy or you're independent by nature, you can create your own schedule and then share it at the end. That's fine too. Um, just make sure you do share what you're doing with your parents, though. Creating the practice schedule can lead to great conversations about what you want to accomplish, what you need to do to accomplish that. Um, it's a really good thing to do as a family. So go ahead now, create your schedule, then put it into use and start practicing. We have 3 weeks of school left before Christmas break, so don't waste any time. You do need to upload your practice schedule into Schoology so that you can get credit. Ideally, upload it before our next class, but if you upload it by next week, that would be fine. Also, as you're implementing your practice schedule, reflect on how it's going. Is it working well? Is it meeting all of your needs? If there's something you find that you don't like about your practice schedule, then make a change as needed. If you need advice, you can also come to me and ask for advice whenever you'd like. So good luck, get cracking, and I wish you good practice. I should also mention that rather than doing a handwritten version of this, you could do it in Excel. And so, for example, I can highlight the spot 8 to 230, and I'll just change the background color. And we'll call that school. And this amount of time, let's do blue. Getting ready. Sleep. Ooh, I don't quite like that. It's a little too intense, so let's maybe switch to green there. I like that better. And this way, as you're doing all sorts of different schedules, sometimes it's kind of nice to have all these different colors to help you keep track of things. Maybe I'm going to practice every day. Maybe I'm going to practice each weekday for about half an hour, and I'll call that my burgundy time.